Kia ora, hi, I'm Che Vincent Bonsai. Today I'm looking at Corokia. I'm creating a tutorial as part of the Hardwired tutorial series on Che Vincent Bonsai website. These guys are not an easy bonsai. They are one of New Zealand's divarigating plants. These plants they evolved with moa, which was a great big bird, a bit like a giant kiwi, but kind of ostrich size, with a grazing mouth, grazing beak. These plants, along with a whole lot of others, developed all different sorts of strategies to avoid being nibbled at, to hide their leaves basically. So rather than having a normal tree structure of growing outwards and having all the leaves on the outside, they grow in a big jumbled mess. So how do you deal with that? Well, I reckon I have figured out three different approaches, three different ways of creating a reasonable bonsai out of Corokia. There's a few different forms of Corokia. It's spelled with a C. This is the normal wild type. It has a little yellow flower and a little red berry. Now its natural growth form is nothing like this at all. It's more like this, but even more jumbled, like a big grey, shaggy, tangled kind of shrub cushion thing. When I leave this one for a season, it does this. Well, it's actually only half a season. There's a few different varieties. It's the wild type. There's a chocolate brown one, which is kind of quite nice. It's got a bigger leaf. And there's this one here, which is obviously a variegated form. It's quite pretty. What I really like about the variegated form is the contrast with the yellow leaf to the dark grey or black stem. This one's growing on a rock. Now, my first approach to these has been minimal. So all I do to create this from this is I just chop off everything that's not sitting in that pad, and centimetre by centimetre each year it grows sideways. Now, as I said, these trees were designed or evolved with moa, so they had to evolve, or they did evolve, to not be eaten. So you can imagine a moa trying to eat these little leaves, and it really just gets mouthfuls of twigs. The twigs themselves are probably photosynthetic as well, but not as much as the leaf. Now, one thing you can do is just get in there and just comb everything out this way. That gives you a good start anyway of at least getting the branches growing in the right direction. So if you do that several times a season, then at least some of the branches are going to be growing where you want them. Not so many of them are going to be growing back into the tree. But to get these little pads, hang on, get my snippers. Actually, I'll use my secateurs because they're quite wiry and tough. Those little snippers are a bit annoying if they get the wrong angle on the branch. They just get sort of choked up with sticks. Now, one thing I have noticed about these is they really don't like being wired. I mean, you can put a little anchor on and pull a branch down, it's fine. But if you get one of these pieces and wire them into place, like actually twist them into the angles and things that you want, like you normally would with a bonsai, they'll just kind of stop growing on that point and grow somewhere else, which is kind of like, well, there's quite a few other trees that do that, I've noticed. So some other of our natives, cherries do that, I've noticed. But this is a very easy, I guess you'd say, laissez-faire way of dealing with these. You do this once or twice a year. basically chop off anything that doesn't look like a bonsai. Isn't growing where you want it to be. And you can go in and detail it as well a bit more. Make sure that these branches are growing where you want them. Sometimes you'll get a big long straight one growing through the middle of what you've just done. You don't really notice it unless you get in there and have a close look. So when you do this, you don't gain a lot each year, but maybe that's okay. Yeah, variegating trees are interesting. They've got some amazing shapes and forms and colours and angles in the branches, some crazy stuff going on, and definitely not of use for traditional bonsai. They don't form a fat trunk very quickly, and they're very wiry, so they don't like being very wiry. Yeah, they're very wiry in their stems, so they're kind of springy. They I mean, I can bend these double and they won't break, but they also don't set very readily into an angle that you want just because you put a wire around it, or they'll take a long time to. And you think you're there, and you take the wire off. That's if it has actually kept growing and hasn't just abandoned that branch, and it just springs back again. Okay, so that's what I can do in a few minutes. Yeah, these are pretty, I've got to say. I have put some wire into these, and I put a wire into the main stem here, and I wired it down, and it's just sprung back up again, and it's not growing anywhere near as fast as this one here, which is the one I actually put aside as a trunk thickener. This is why I've got this little wire loop on it, just to remind me not to chop it off, because it's a thickener. But now it's actually looking better than the one that I selected as a leader. So I might take this one off and leave this one as my main cascade. So I'm not doing too much, really just shortening back bits and pieces to maintain its overall structure. I found that if I hit it too hard, it just really sulks. It's really hard to keep it vigorous. It takes a few years to really recover any kind of vigor again. So I might just have to leave it alone about now. I'm not very good at leaving trees alone. It takes from cutting very readily. Bang that into your wet sand and water it every day, it'll grow. Yeah, I have been growing this tree already for, I don't actually know how long, but I'm thinking it could be 15 years actually. It's not a very fat trunk. Right, so another way of approaching these things is, where's my wire? You can use wire to create these pads, but not in the normal way. First I'll just take a few of the bigger stems out, especially out of the top, because I want to keep the growth in the bottom. I'm just cutting back to a side branch. Couple more. See these ones growing from way back inside here. In fact, that one there is actually coming right from the trunk. I don't think we need it there though. Right, so here's a branch, a pad. So I want this branch to come down a bit, so I'll just punch a hole in here, put my piece of wire through, come up to the branch. Now I'm going to bend this at a right angle, 90 degrees, straight across, wrap it around underneath, so it's going flat, back over the top again, and basically just flattening all these out into a single plane. That's crude, and what I'm hoping is that these branches will create little leaves, and then I'll just be able to prune back and sort out what I want to go forward with from those. I have done it before, and it does work. So just pull them all down, coming away from the tree. Basically just wrap them up. I'd like this one to come down a bit too. Underneath. Now, this is not what you're going to do when you want to put your bonsais on show, obviously. This is a straight up horse training method, which does work. It does increase the size of your pads quite quickly. been thinking I'd quite like to go up to Canaan, which is a local mountain, small mountain hill locally. In Australia you'd call it a mountain, over here we call it a hill. It's on Takaka Hill. And up there is a whole forest of, I don't know, dozens of different species of divaricating moa plants. So it's actually a real moa rich area. It's a karst area, so it's limestone, and there's all these caves, and inside these caves people find whole skeletons of moa quite regularly. Now, if you haven't caught up with what moa are a giant bird that used to live in New Zealand that was wiped out. Over the last 1,000 years, they're wiped out. I'm just going to leave these little bits on top to start sort of growing out into something else. A top, hopefully. So yeah, I'd quite like to go up there and have a wander around with the camera and get some footage of all these different very cool plants and these crazy forms they have. So they're all developed and evolved these different forms, which are all about how not to get eaten, how to make yourself unpalatable, or so small that it's not worth trying to, that your leaves so small that not worth trying to eat, or so angled in such a way that the bird just can't get their mouth around the branches, the twigs, the leaves. Cool, so that hopefully will increase the pad size by, well, this is the one which I've just done by chopping. If I just chopped this one, it would have been, all this here would just be chopped off. So I've probably doubled the pad size, or even tripled it in places by doing that. We'll come back and check it out. Now, a third way of dealing with these plants is quite different. Again, we need to comb all these branches out, try and keep them all growing away from the trunk, like a normal tree would be, because we're trying to create something that looks like a normal tree. It's what is it? It's about 80 centimeters high. Just trying to reposition the camera so you can see the whole thing. Oh, that's as close as I can get. So it's got, you know, a reasonable trunk. It's got a good taper over the whole thing. I haven't chopped it. I've just kind of let it do its thing. I've removed something here at some point. It's got a funky shape, so it's really quite a cool tree. Now, the leaves are, hang on, bring it close so you can see, like the proper leaves, I guess you'd say, are right in here, close in the tree. They'd normally be protected by a whole stack of these twigs, so they wouldn't be able to be eaten. Tastes alright, they're not too bitter or anything, probably quite palatable. Now there are tiny little wee leaves on the twig itself, so small that I can't imagine that they even be worth trying to collect to eat if you're a moa. So a moa are a vegetarian, and they just wander around basically like a bird cow. They eat a bird forest cow, so maybe more like a gorilla, which is a primate cow. Believe it or not, they have a huge gut and they just digest cellulose. Well, they have bacteria in their gut that's just cellulose. They just wander around eating cellulose. So, what I'm thinking about this one is actually just treating these twigs as if they were leafy branches and ignoring the fact that there's bigger leaves back in here. So creating a nice open form. So one thing what I do have to do is go and take off the heavier pieces off the back of the branches, like so, and keep those branches all heading out and away from the main stem. And of course, branches that are growing back into the trunk have to come off as well. So if I look at it in detail, I'll come into one branch and we'll have a look. So I want everything coming this way. So that means I have to take off some of these things that are tangling back on themselves. You don't want branches crossing over. At the same time, I don't want to take everything off it. So come up to the next one. Take these little twigs that are going back into the tree. I'll take off any little twigs that are actually on the trunk itself as well. And close in. And just allow these extensions coming out this way. Come down to the next one, which is here. I'll just take this wire off. We'll see if it's actually done its job. Like I said, they're very springy, so they often move. It's been there for a while. It seems to have set, which is good. So I want to make sure each branch has got its own space, and I can gently manipulate individual twigs to carry on growing in the right direction as well. So this one here is kind of a bit of a problem. I'll just take it off, I think. I'm left with those ones there. I'll just quickly do around the bottom. This one here is sprung up quite a bit. Probably be nicer down here. And this here is, I could pull it right out, but it gets pretty long, so I just stick it to here. So it's nuanced, not perfect, just like best fit. This branch is also wired down, this one at the back, primary branch. Can't see it, it's in there somewhere. Piece of wire. There it is. Looks like a twig. Gotcha. So you can see that bounced back up again as soon as I took it off. So I'll put it back on again, and I'll wrap it around this other branch which I was wanting to pull in like that. There we go. So I've decided that branch which I left is too big to be out that far out in the tree. So you can see I've lightened these right out, and I just have to keep selecting each year, just selecting constantly. So I'm coming further up the tree. Got some quite nice angles here going on. Everything's mostly coming away from the trunk now. A few little light ones are still going back. They can be pruned up in time. There's some little wee bits of wire which I've used to just gently anchor down branches up further. You can see now that where there are still these leaves, they kind of look odd. Let's chop them out. You can see here I've got this big heavy piece there. Let's take it back. Coming up further, more heavy pieces. Now the top is where all the growth's happening, and I've got to reduce that. So I have taken out some heavy stuff out of the top and taken out a few more of these bits of shoots in the crotches, and I reckon it looks pretty cool. Quite happy with that as a bonsai. It's about 75 centimeters high now, and the key would be keeping it low and keeping it really light in the top. And if you really want to, you could go through and actually take out all this chunky material along this. Well, basically in this tree we were trying to create that leafy material, make these leafy pads. So these trees are the same age, and this one I'm trying to do away with it and just go with the twigs. Yeah, Corokia.